Friday. It's Friday. February 23rd. Hey, what's up, everybody? Oh, my goodness. I gotta get some coffee. So, weird week. I gave up my current schedule and alternated a few things this week. So, it's working out pretty good. So basically, I tried starting my day with writing because I'm told that that's the best way to do it. You get up, your brain's fresh. That's the best time for writing, and man, I just do not agree with that. I wrote like an entire novel after work every day. It took me about 3 or 4 months to do the first draft. So it's like I kept telling myself, why am I writing first thing in the morning if I know I can write after work? So I started writing after work, which would really be between 8 and 10 p.m. and then I'd go back to drawing. The problem is I get headaches when I draw. Massive headaches. It's not really I don't know if headaches is quite the word. It's like dizziness. It's some mental muscle that just throws my head for a loop. Always have. There's nothing new. Even the last time I was writing seriously actively. That's two adjectives. It's not good. When I was writing a lot, when I couldn't draw very well back in the early 2000s, I would, in the army, I would wake up with massive, these, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like when you drag your feet across the ground and, like the rubber soles kind of scrape against the pavement. It'd feel like that from the back of my head to the front. Only get it when I'm writing. So basically, after 2 hours, I'm done. Simultaneously. Because I can draw late at night. Usually around 2 in the morning when I stop, between 2 and 3 a.m. Sometimes my mind's very active from drawing, so I have a hard time getting to sleep. So I don't know why this didn't occur to me earlier. It seems pretty obvious. But if writing puts me to sleep, and I can write pretty well at night, why isn't it the last thing I do? And I think the reason why is because when it comes to writing, I'm not good at stopping my art to go write. I think that's basically it. When I was writing the novel version of Game Cave, I was working in Carlsbad in San Diego, and it was about an hour's drive back to my apartment in Linda Vista. And with traffic, it could be 2 hours that time of day. So rather than being stuck in traffic for 2 hours, I would go to one of 3 different hotel lobbies, buy a coffee from their, what do you call that? The commissary, whatever. So I was a patron, and I'd write there for about a couple hours until traffic would die down and I can get home, more efficiently. And so that drive home would kind of perk my brain up a little bit. I wouldn't have the headaches. Like I would walking out to my car, and then after I got some fresh air, took a deep breath, and then drove around the parking lot once just to make sure I was good to go. Then I could continue on. I'm not driving everywhere every night. So I started this 2 nights ago, and things are getting written. It's starting off a little slow, but it's getting done. The problem is now I'm up till 4:30, and Rob needs at least 6 hours of sleep to be effective. Rob. SketchCraft in third person. So I need 6 hours. So I'm getting up around 10:30. Kind of, the alarm goes off, and I'm trying to get out of bed by 11. Sometimes I look at the news. I read the news too much in the morning, and I'm not out of bed till 11:30, like today. So then I go downstairs, and I'm supposed to take my walk and shit. So my walk is not getting done this week, nor has podcast gotten done this week. But the writing's getting done. So, what am I trying to get at, folks? I'm not trying to turn this into a daily, Rob's trying to find out the key to life, motivational, perfect work schedule thing. The thing is how much can you do and be motivated and not burnt out, and how much? So, and what schedule works given the amount of conditions in your life. And right now this is working, but I gotta get the walk back in. Plus, folks, I hate walking in the afternoon. I burn. So this is a problem. I think the trick is, at this point, I'm just going to have to get up and make a podcast. Make my coffee, make a podcast. Be on the clock at 12. And then pull 5 hours. I'm supposed to work 8 hours a day. But I can pull 5 hours and then put in an additional 6 hours on the weekend to make up the difference. So I could work for 5 hours and then have my dinner break, go for a walk, have a dinner break, work for an additional 2 hours. And then I can pull an extra 5 hours on the weekend to make up the difference. Yeah, 5 hours. So this is just, plus I have staggered breaks to allow time to edit. And that's one of the trickier things when you're working by yourself, is how do you edit your own work? I mean, how do you, when you're in the middle of what you're working on, be able to take an objective look at the state of where it's at? Because I do not want, nor do I actively seek out internet feedback. There's too many of you out there for that to be effective. And the thing with feedback is, it kind of has to start with what were you trying to accomplish? Not because if it starts with how well you drew something, that gets entirely subjective. There's a grip of people out there who would look at my art and anything I do and just go, that's not realistic, and the hands aren't that big, and what's fucking wrong with you, and learn to draw. Like, I'm not, I would, it's a waste. It's a waste to invite that opinion. It's a waste of their time, really. Because I'm never going to listen to them, so why do that? So one of the ways I do that is I having a dinner break and then being able to come back, and because I cook dinner, I make everything from scratch around here, and this year I'll be growing a bit of my stuff from scratch. Not a lot, but I'm going to start with herbs and garlic and tomatoes and some easier stuff to grow around here, and that'll be new. That's going to be fun. So yeah, and then I go from there to drawing for about 4 hours on power prints, and then have a break, brush teeth, clean up, and then write for 2 hours until I get a headache and then pass out. So I care about consistency at this point. I don't care too much about speed. So if you're like, okay, that means I'm going to get 2,000 words written tonight. I don't know. That might be 500 words. It might be 2,000. It might be 100. I don't care about consistency, quality. I always, here's a little trick, folks. Always write down specifically what you're trying to accomplish before you do it. I treat it like a menu. Like, what's on the menu today? I don't write down everything I'd love to eat. I specifically write down what I'm going to do. And, I'm going to work on this glove. That's my goal tonight. I'm going to do breakdowns on this piece of armor, if I have time afterward. And then when I'm writing, I'm going to get, like a general outline for the whole piece. And then I'm going to focus on this conversation. And then I'm going to focus on that conversation. And then I'm going to focus on this piece. So, and I try as much as possible to start with some kind of editing. So I'm not starting off with a blank page. Now, if you're starting a new project, like a new cover, a new pinup, whatever, your new page, and you're like, well, you have to start with the blank page, Rob. That's true. But I don't make it the first thing I do. If I have nothing else going on art-wise, and just say I have one thing, and that thing involves starting with a blank page, then what I will do is I will print out something that I did and redraw it or fix it. Like a lot of my digital work, I eventually print out onto a board and ink it traditionally and give it the whole spiffy-do once a cover, so I always have a physical piece of any cover I do. Now that, involves drawing things twice, but, it's always a backup. So I don't rush those things through production, but I do eventually get to them. And I got a few. I got another one on the docket here soon. So I always try to start with something as an editing process. If it's writing, I will. That's a little tricky. The easiest thing I can say is I like to make bullet points. So I'll just start with bullet points, and I will literally, let's say it's a game review. I'll start with bullet points, and I'll start talking about Ninja Turtles. Next bullet point, I'm going to argue about the graphics. Sub bullet point, like hit the tab key. Bacon loves the flicker, thinks it's, sign of technical, shows that they're pushing the hardware to the limits, and that's amazing. Truffles hates it. Enter one more time to go back to bullet point. End review with Truffles walking out to go eat tacos or some shit like that. Just something very basic. And I may not even keep any of it, but that's how I'll start. And then under each one, that little bit is enough. I can already feel my head now going, oh, you're starting to swarm around, Rob. Yeah, you take a deep breath. You take a deep breath. And then I start in on a section in the middle. I'll start it on the middle. And I just start, in this case, it's a piece about talking about the game. So I'll just start in with a couple bullet points that are the technical, or if I'm in the mood, I'll start with the characters talking, and I won't keep any of it. I'll just start with random. So I like the graphics. I hate the graphics. Well, no. You're a poopy head. Well, you're a double douchebag. So, like it could just go that path to the point where I get to the point where I'm not actively thinking about it. It's just kind of flowing through. And then I give myself like a time limit, like 30 minutes. And then I reread what I got and start deleting and editing very quickly. And look, when it's narrative, it's not a game review. When it's a novel, it's the same thing. It's bullet points. And I can take those bullet points and start to make little bits, little scenes that kind of get characters through it very linearly, very, very boring, by the way. And then I can throw those up on index cards in Scrivener and start to move the scenes around, if I want to do that. Or I can just jump in on a scene and start to hyper detail how I think it would flow. And it starts to become like a puzzle, And I refine those outlines until you basically have the book kind of like all worked out. And then I check those outlines against my character arcs and motivations, and I kind of like tag where I think certain things should need to occur. But I always start in the middle, roughly the middle, and then work my way back to the end and then back to the front, because the front sort of helps mirror. You want the front to mirror a little bit where the end's going to go without going too far. Be careful you don't give away your entire story in the opening chapter, folks, of anything you do. But that's it, and art is not that much more different. In a way, when I'm drawing silhouettes, it's kind of like jumping to the middle. Like I already have a figure posing. I'm not spending time working on construction. I'm not drawing a bunch of perspective lines down and trying to line everything up before I start. I'm kind of just jumping to the pose, but it's just a mass of, of a solid color. Yeah, so that's what I do. And things are getting done. It never gets done as fast as you want, right? Like when you have a good day, you're like, I could have. There's a way I can eke out more performance. There probably isn't. Not quality performance. You can always make yourself do more, but if you're having to go back and constantly edit because you kind of rush through it, then you probably should do less. Like this Darksiders piece I'm working on. So initially, when I did my comp about 1.5 years ago, my color roughy, I just blocked in the characters as they look in game. As I'm working out the piece, I started with War's sword. He's got this giant sword with all these faces in the center of it. I really wanted to push the design of that. I wanted to give a lot of those skulls and some attitudes. I wanted to add teeth to it and these like stitch lines, and I wanted the faces to stretch into the blade pieces. And it still looks like the sword, but it's just like my slight interpretation of it. And so that set a tone for me that, okay, I want this to look like War, but I want to do my own armor set. However, fans of the game are going to want something that's game accurate somewhere. And on my initial roughie, on the third print in, is Fury, the female. I think her name is Fury. And I'm bad with names, folks. And she has the 3 plushies with her of War, Strife, and Death, and a copy of the games. So I was always like, man, one of the things when I first did that was, I'm glad I worked in the plushies because it's fun. But it feels like I'm drawing characters twice, right? Only now I know that those plushies will be the game accurate versions of the armor sets. So, it's both. And that's something that I only arrived at like last night. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's how I could define that, So I was designing his gloves and armor sets on the drawing, folks. It's not like I'm figuring all these concepts out and then going to do the piece. Like, I'm working it out as I draw, which can, slow things down, But I had a question I got on Facebook from one of our longtime fans, Tua. She's cool. She's an artist too, and her and her husband live out there in Finland, Norway or Finland. I can't remember. So but she was asking me, how big is the canvas when I draw, right? How big is the canvas? She says, I'll specifically ask it. Oh man, it doesn't want to open up. Okay, I need to ask, how huge are your canvas size? Because I can always draw the details so clearly. When I'm drawing these pieces now, the comic size that I have for the art is actually not as big. I used to draw things at an insane, I used to draw things at 600 DPI. It'd be like 3,000 by 4,000 pixels. But I actually wanted the lines to be softer. And I started this on the last cover I did, the Valkyrie profile cover. I turn it down to 300 dpi, but the canvas size is comic book, so it's not even 11 by 17. It is 6.87 by 10.34 at 300 dpi, so it's about 2,000 by 3,000 pixels. And then I'll scale it up a little bit, obviously if I need to print, and just hit unsharp mask. And there is, if you had 2%, here's a trick, folks. If you're working a little bit under resolution and you blow something up to a poster, even 11 by 17, just do two things once you enlarge it. One, fill a layer with black and add 2% noise monochromatic. So if you go to filter in Photoshop, add noise, set it to monochromatic, add 2, set it to amount 2, and that'll throw a little noise in your art that will take care of any banding or imperfections that upscaling causes. And then on the original art, unsharp mask at 50% one time if you want it to be a little sharper. And it looks fine. And the benefit to doing it this way was I get to draw, it makes the drawing much more faster. And it can be a little imperfect and not have to worry about the lines being so perfectly perfect. So I draw at an 80% opacity, no, 65. Yeah, I draw at 65% opacity. So they're a little softer. And I set my eraser to about 80% opacity. So when I erase, I still get a little bit of the gray line. And I'm not creating new layers. I'm drawing a lot on one layer. And then if I like that and I want to do a cleanup pass on that whole bit, I'll turn that opacity down and then do a cleanup pass. But I'm going to make videos detailing all this stuff visually. So I'm just explaining it to you folks. But the last cover, and with the concept work I've been doing, I've been refining this process over the last month, and it's working quite well. The hardest part was shifting my head, my mind, because I got used to seeing my art drawn a certain way, and when I was working digitally, and when I wasn't doing that, I kept feeling like I was doing it wrong, even though it didn't look wrong. Like you guys look at it and go, "Oh, that looks great." In my head, I was like, "No, it's not right." So I had to change, that. It's also a confidence issue. Like, if I don't know it's going to work out, then can I trust this process? But when I compound that with adding like stroke layers, where the layer effect has a black stroke and I paint in white, and then paint on top of that to add extra little details, you combine those things together, you can draw a lot in a third of the time. So I designed and drew his glove in about 3 or 4 hours complete. And you could say that's a long time for a glove, but look at all the detail too. And that's an original design, like it kind of mixes some of the concept art of war with the end game piece. Plus I added a few of my own little bits to it. So, in about 4 hours from nothing to final, I mean, that's pretty good, all things considered, how the size of that was. And I couldn't do that 2 months ago, not digitally. I tried with the Berserk cover that I did for Megavisions and just quit, printed it out, and drew it. So, it's going well, folks. It's going well. And I'm working at the point now where I feel really excited about the next thing I do. I'm not like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. The only thing that's kind of a challenge right now is getting my walks in, which have to happen because, exercise, folks. And 2, the painting that I'm doing, the digital painting that I'm doing for my concept art, for my clients, is taking much longer than it should. I'm just not a painter by trade. I get more of an illustrator. So the process I have now has gotten to the point where I tend to get approved without tons of revisions now, which is nice, but it's taking a lot of time. So today I got another piece to color up for them, and I'm going to give myself a time limit, between 4 hours. And I'm going to try and simplify some of my process and see if I can't make that happen. Because I really do. It's taking me eight hours to color the last one, and that's ridiculous. So I need to move that forward, 4 hours is acceptable to me, but 8 is not. It may just be that it's just going to take me a year of this to, in any way, shape, or form, to continually get better at it. So it could just be a time in thing, folks. Like, I don't know, but I have a very specific goal, and that's cut my time in half, or at least, 5 hours, fine, but 8, 4 hours. I know I can do it. Things have to be very specific, because these pieces that I'm doing end up getting modeled in 3D. So they have to reflect they have to reflect the character. They have to reflect the goal of the final 3D model. So there's a lot of, I can't just make stuff up or change things as I'm working. And then there's texturing, there's certain hard surfaces, soft surfaces. And so for some artists out there, that's what's easy for them to do. Much like drawing a grip of details on the sword is super easy for me, but it's not easy for me to go there and render it all up in color. Like, that takes more effort for me. So, it could just be that I have limits. As do we all. As does this podcast. Because we have reached the limit for today's show. It is February 23rd, Friday. And it is time. It's time to go to work, folks.